Hello, and welcome to another episode of Curated Conversations, a podcast by the Grand Rapids African American Health Institute, where we talk all things health and wellness. My name is Ashley, and I will be your host for today's conversation. I am excited because today we have Allison Brito with Radiant Roots here joining us. So we're going to go ahead and start off and read your bio. We have Allison Brito is a dedicated doula who provides emotional, educational, and physical support to women and their families during the transformative birthing year. She specializes in comfort techniques, offering informational guidance and using affirmations and other verbal tools to help release fear and build confidence. Her experience spans a wide variety of birthing scenarios, including hospital and home births, with and without medication, and supporting families with varying levels of partner and family involvement. She is passionate about meeting clients where they are and helping them achieve their goals to ensure they feel empowered and satisfied with their birth experience. With a background in education, Allison enjoys sharing knowledge and resources to help families make informed choices. She is fluent and speaks in both Spanish and English, ensuring accessible communication with a diverse range of clients. Allison, I am so excited. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
I'm super excited too.
So to give a little background, Allison and I met. I was invited to a warm referral network Zoom meeting, and it was a wonderful experience. You know, just networking with the other doulas and just other people in the birthing space. And this kind lady just kind of like hit me on the side and just like, hey, my name is Allison. I would love to just learn more about your organization at GRAAHI. Did not know that she was the Radiant Roots, like had her whole entire doula practice going on. So we'll lead into that. Can you tell us a little bit about Radiant Roots and how it all came together?
Yes. So first of all, I have been a doula for over 10 years now in the community, and I have just seen a lot and experienced a lot of things, which made me realize even more than just the research tells us that some people are not experiencing good care. In fact, really a lot of people are not experiencing good care, but especially in the field of maternity and birth, there's some big gaps that are going on in our community right now. And so as I've been practicing as a doula, which involves coming alongside the birthing person during pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum period, just a lot of things have come to light. And one of those is the disparities facing people of color, people who are lower income. Just a lot of different people are not even getting the standard of care that the other Americans are receiving, which is not even that great in terms of the world. Mm-hmm. So, just gradually as I was serving a lot of different clients, including clients who speak other languages, then I realized, wow, they don't have as many options, right? And so that led me to start to take on apprentices. And that was a couple years ago that I started that. I took on apprentices and I had a focus on bilingual doulas, trying to train more of them up because we just need them in the community. At the time, I was the only bilingual doula in the community. And now we have 4, which is still not tons, but we're working on it. So took on apprentices. That also made it a little more accessible because they were able to charge a lower rate because they were newer in the program, like in the doula world. I've always had a heart, anybody who goes into any kind of helping services has a heart to help people, but the need to be sustainable is also there. And so, we can only do so many free births or discounted births until we burn out, and then we're no longer serving anybody. And so that's always been one of my goals, is to, yes, serve people at an accessible rate, but also be sustainable in ourselves so that we can keep serving people. So that's definitely a challenge that we've faced. And I'm sorry, this is the very long version of answering your question, but I wanted to give a little background. So I started with the apprentices, and then I got connected with Legacy Builders Foundation, which is a newer nonprofit. President is Robert Heath. He's a member of the community as well. And he was actually my coach at Spring GR. So that's how we got connected. And he basically made it possible for us to start a program of even more affordable doula services. And we call that Legacy Moms. And that it's still technically running, but it started almost 2 years ago now. And we've served people with an emphasis on African American and Latino clients, but not necessarily exclusively, but just and at a very discounted rate, and it includes prenatal classes and more postpartum support than the average doula usually gives, plus, of course, the birth support. So that was really good. It was slow going in terms of getting the word out. And so that led us to brainstorm more. And through some partnerships that I had with other community members, we created another program which was kind of adjacent, but will very soon be merged with Legacy Moms. So that program is Radiant Roots Doula Network. And we launched in January, but obviously the thought process and the planning was way before that because we were applying for grants, trying to get it off the ground. I was talking to a lot of community members, a lot of potential doulas in the community that I thought would be a good fit for the network. And so all of that kind of came together in January when the grant started, and we are still going strong now. But it is a network of doulas that all are either part of the BIPOC community and or bilingual in some other language and or accepting Medicaid, because now Michigan Medicaid covers doula services. It's a little more complicated than that, but it's a step in the right direction. So we really wanted to, I say we, but it really was more me, guiding this vision of serving the people who have the least options. Yeah. And so really pouring into those doulas. A lot of them are newer doulas, not all of them. And so my role as the program director, besides guiding the vision and quality control, is also pouring into those doulas and making sure that they have what they need to be successful, because that makes the experience of their clients good and, reduces the birth trauma and, raises the rate of positive outcomes too, which we can talk more about if you want. If you think your listeners don't know a lot about what doula services do and what the evidence is
for sure
behind.
You can definitely expound on that.
Yeah, I just don't know. So a doula is a non-medical support person that is hired directly by the person who is pregnant. So ideally, that's earlier on in pregnancy. That doesn't always happen. But let's say you're in your second trimester and you hire a doula. That doula will be with you throughout the rest of your pregnancy, your birth process, and then your postpartum period, at least for a while. So what that looks like is we meet one-on-one with that client and their family and their support people, if they have a partner, if they have a mom, if they have whoever's there, to help them prepare emotionally, educationally, and physically for birth. So the way I do it with my clients, every doula is slightly different, but I think it's pretty standard that we help them make a birth plan if they want to. We help them get access to good information, whether that's books, articles, childbirth classes, all that stuff. We do a lot of in-the-moment support, which could be a phone call if they're feeling overwhelmed or if they're having aches and pains, and helping them navigate that. So we do a minimum of 2 in-person visits, then unlimited virtual support. And so you really get to know each other, get to know them, their goals. Our goals are their goals. Mm-hmm. So if you're my client, I don't come in and say, okay, this is what you need to do for your birth. No. I listen first. I'm like, okay, what are your goals? What are your fears? What are your hopes? What would be the ideal situation for you, both for birth and postpartum? We don't want to forget that transitional period there after that. So once you tell me your goals, then I can give suggestions. And I'm very careful about how to give suggestions because, again, we are not medical providers, but we do know a lot about birth and about what things help prepare you to have a better experience. And when you have a better experience, guess what? You feel more equipped to parent. You feel more confident as a person, really. And you don't have to hopefully deal with as much post-birth trauma, which unfortunately is a part of a lot of people's stories. So if you tell me, for example, some of our clients tell us, okay, I want a natural birth. I don't want to use medication. I want to go into go into labor spontaneously. Then I might make certain suggestions for pregnancy and say, okay, well, here's some exercises that you could do. Here are some affirmations. Why don't you choose some that might be powerful to you? Here are some other tools, emotional tools, especially if they have certain fears. Let's talk about those fears. Let's talk through and I can tell you from my experience how often those things actually happen. and what are some things that can help lower your risk for those things.
Yeah.
You know, big common fears are tearing a lot,
Mm-hmm.
C-section. What's another big fear? I would say those are the biggest, or just feeling out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are very common and legitimate fears that people have. So we talk through them, which often helps them lose power.
Yeah.
And but we also make a plan. Like I'm a very proactive doula myself, and that's how I've trained my doulas. So on the one hand, it's all about them, and they're the boss. You know, I keep reminding them over and over that you are the boss. We're here to support you in your goals. That being said, I do offer suggestions, and they can take them or leave them, and I don't want to overwhelm them with too many things either. So that happens earlier on. Then we practice things. So we practice positions, we practice comfort techniques, and that often involves, if they have a support person or a partner, I love to get them involved in that as well, so that they can feel empowered to be hands-on and be actually a practical help in that during the birth. And then we also plan for postpartum. So that could be anything from just chatting through, like, who are your support people? What things can we prepare now to help you for that period? To actually making a written plan if they want to. So that they have that tool when they're in the fog of, I just had a baby, what do I do now?
Yeah, right. So it just really, to me, when I think about a doula, it is really just the support person for the birthing person, just being there, being an advocate, and which actually leads, I would like to know, with being a doula, what has been your experience with navigating those spaces in the hospital? Like, have you had any challenging situations, you know, because I'm sure hospitals have a certain way of doing things, but how do you balance, like, still trying to follow hospital protocol, but also while being there for your birthing person?
Sure, that's a really good question. So yeah, thank you for bringing up advocacy. That is another big thing that we do, and that can be a word that might be interpreted differently by different people. I've definitely had clients say, I want you to speak up for me, and I always have to tell them, okay, I'm not going to speak for you. Your voice is the one that should be elevated, but what I can do is make sure that your voice is heard. And that looks different depending on the situation. But if they say something, I can repeat it. I can, you know, in situations, if they're really not being heard, then I might get a little bit more assertive. I'm being very careful with my words here, but because it is important, they're the ones going through this. And even ACOG, which is the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, has a very clear statement on what informed consent looks like and doesn't look like, and it includes them 100% understanding everything that's being offered to them, including the alternatives, and then being able to make that choice and to be supported in that choice, even if it's not something that the provider themselves would have made. So I'm sure you can guess that doesn't always happen.
Right.
And that's not because providers are evil or anything like that. It's partly because the system is just not set up to be patient-centered like that. Often they don't have the time or the, you know, motivation to kind of take that, especially like in our biggest hospital here, you know, it's just a lot of people birth there every day. And it's hard to run a hospital like that without it becoming without having a system, right? And so those systems, some of them are good, but when someone asks for an exception to the rule or to the general standard of policy or practice, then different providers will treat that very differently. Some of them are like, great, sounds great, and some of them don't. And so making sure, I think a big part of advocacy is talking ahead of time with my client about if you're telling me this is what you're wanting, and I know that that's not what will automatically happen if you don't say anything, then we'll just talk through that, and we'll just be really honest. Like, hey, you know, maybe you'll get a nurse that's like, sweet, you don't want that? Cool. Or maybe you'll get one that's like, well, the doctor really, really likes it when these patients do this. Then being prepared for those conversations and just checking their comfort level too in how comfortable they are in being outspoken for advocating for themselves and kind of feeling that out. And I will say there's a lot of nuance there because we're talking people and people are all different. And so my goal there is to make sure that they are heard and that they're respected. If that happens, even if their birth plan goes out the window, even if things don't happen the way they were hoping originally, if they are heard and respected, their chance for birth trauma is much lower. Because you can have a completely natural birth and not be respected, and you're going to have birth trauma. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. So that's kind of, I feel like I'm saying a lot about that. But so the advocacy piece, yes, we're witnesses. So just our presence sometimes will get a different kind of care because we're witnesses, and we are present for a good chunk of the actual birthing process, whereas the nurses are in and out. The doctor, you'll barely see if you're having a vaginal birth. Like, that's just the reality of it. They're managing your care, but in terms of like sitting there holding your hand, not so much. And that's fine. That's not their role. And so you asked, how have I been received? I will say I have not had any actual confrontations with doctors, and it's been over 10 years.
Wow.
Even though I will speak up if I do see some people that are not being heard, because that's their right. So there's a big range. Some providers are like, oh, I'm so glad you got a doula, because they know that it actually makes their job easier, or can. But there are some people that maybe don't understand our role, A, and B, just like in any profession, there are some people that maybe practice a little differently and maybe are a little more come in with that attitude of their fists up kind of before they're even challenged and before anything even happens. And so unfortunately, providers have that in the back of their mind, and we're fighting against that. But I will say, because doulas are becoming a lot more common, thankfully, I just don't have that as much anymore, even where they're kind of like, wait, what's a doula? Or still a range in terms of reception, how we're received, but again, never been kicked out of a room, never like had anybody that I know of, right, complain about me in that way.
So with your doulas, your network of doulas at Radiant Roots, do you have these type of conversations with them to like try to, that it's a possibility that you may be received this way, or this is a strong possibility that this may happen? Like, do you have those type of conversations with them? If so, like, how does that go? Like, how do you, because I can imagine, especially if, and I know you guys are a little under a year old, and two-part question. Sure. I would like to know the range of doulas that you have. Do you have experienced doulas as well? And then do you have doulas that are just starting out? So I know that for doulas that are maybe just starting out, this could possibly be their first birthing birth that they have, and then they go in there and they don't know what to expect. So do you have those conversations with the doulas in your network?
Yes. So the first thing to note is that all of the doulas in our network are already trained. So I am not a trainer. I'm not an agency. We don't collect money from the doulas or anything like that. We're just a network to connect them. So all of them have had some kind of training, whether that's through DONA or through other organizations that do at least touch on some of these points. I will say, even with my training as a newer doula, it was a very hard thing for me to navigate that advocacy piece. And there's only so much you can actually teach without actually doing it. So with my apprentices, actually, as part of our curriculum, we do a role play for advocacy, and I give them different situations that I've actually encountered just to see how they do, because you're going to make mistakes. I mean, this is just when you are new in a profession, you're going to make mistakes, and I think that's partly what I also tell my doulas is like, I tend to be a perfectionist, so I will beat myself up for every mistake that I've made. But that's not really helpful, and that's not realistic, so I don't want them to do that. So definitely encouraging them that it's normal to encounter situations where, looking back, you wish that you had done things differently, or you wish you had spoken up in a different way, or been prepared for that turn, like that pivot that was needed. And so we do have those conversations. And so the doulas that are in the network right now, and when they came to us, we had people who had 0 births, like they were just recently trained. And, so it's still, I encourage them that you are still better than no doula, because you know a lot, you know the medical terminology, for example, so you can help your client even know what's going on.
Right.
You know some comfort measures, some basic comfort measures that will automatically make you valuable to them so that they can have a more comfortable birth. It's just your presence, literally just your presence is making a difference.
Yeah.
So it really is of value to even have a newer doula. And often you get the bonus of they're super eager and they'll probably hang out with you for maybe longer than a more experienced doula would. So there's some benefit to even choosing a newer doula like that. But then I would say the average doula in our network is maybe a year into it, a year to 2 years. So newer, but experienced enough that they've had some births, they've had some different kinds of births, they've had different kinds of clients in different settings. You know, it's there's a lot of different factors there. So that's the short answer. The majority are newer-ish, and that's why I like to pour into them as much as I can. We've done formal trainings where we meet together and work on a skill set. They all have access to me while they're at births if they want to call and be like, hey, do you have any suggestions for this situation? And they have access to me too, just an off times to talk through their business or practices and things like that. That being said, I do encourage individuality. It's a very personalized profession. That's why it's not regulated by the government, and I'm glad about that because then different different training agencies can have a different focus and a different style. Yeah. And that's okay. Right. And it's such an individual, personal thing. It's like choosing a therapist.
Yes.
And so you wouldn't want all therapists to be the same. Mm-hmm. Like that would
you
just
need it catered to you.
Yes, exactly.
What works best for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, totally. So as you know, we here at GRAAHI we trained 13 doulas back in the summer, and we are working to get them certified. Yes. And along with that, helping them with their business and getting up and running with all of that. So we just recently did a business retreat for them, and they're feeling pretty confident about going forward. Awesome. My question to you is, as an established doula in the community, like what encouragement would you give to new doulas about starting their own community-centered practice?
Yes. So times have changed since I started, which is a good thing. When I started, there were very few doulas in town. A lot of people didn't know what a doula was. Even people in the birthing world didn't necessarily all know exactly what a doula's role was. And for sure, it was 100% private pay. And so what that ended up looking like, just practically speaking, is it was mostly white women, middle class and up, that were getting doulas, that were even knowing about them and that could afford them. And so it was just a very different playing field, I guess. And so I will say it's very hard to get started in that environment because advertising is hard, because if people don't even know that they want a doula or what a doula is, then why would they pay you, this amount of money to do that? Once you get established with word of mouth, that's where most of my clients come from now, then it's easier, but it's still not consistent money. Again, it's very different than a therapist, but I'm going to throw that analogy out there again because my husband's a therapist and he works on his own. And so if he has a bunch of clients this week, he gets paid this much. If he next week is a little slower, that's, we have to plan for that. And that's really hard when you're leaving a regular W-2 profession. Most doulas that are still around, which are very few from my generation, are worked up to it. And that's what I did. I was very part-time at the beginning. I worked at jobs that were super flexible and gracious if I had to leave for a birth. And it's only been in the last few years since COVID, basically, that I've been full-time. And even full-time still, I have to hustle a little bit, depending on, sometimes I'm full and I have to turn people away. And then other times I'm like, oh,
nobody's having a baby.
Nobody's having a baby this month. So I am very honest with every single doula I come across that it is not that you're just going to get trained and people are going to come flood you and trying to hire you. I wish it were that way. Yeah. That would be amazing. We would have so many more doulas and more people would have doulas. So, but that is the reality even now. So that is a big challenge, is finding clients, I would say, and maintaining a client load that actually makes you enough money to live on. But right now with the Medicaid piece too. That's another challenge, but it's also a huge potential benefit. So once you are paneled with Medicaid, with the different plans, you're on the state registry. So if people know that that's their insurance and they know they want a doula, they can look for you directly there. But also with Radiant Roots, part of what we do is we partner with a lot of local organizations like clinics, Cherry Health, that kind of thing, where they know about us. And so if they have someone that they think could use a doula or has said they want a doula, but they think they can't afford one, they know that we have doulas who take Medicaid. They know we have some scholarship money, and they'll send them and they'll be able to access that. So guess what? That means more work for our doulas as well. It's just a win-win in that sense. So, but yes, I would say big challenge at the beginning is finding clients. And then I think another burnout is real. And so finding sustainability in your own practice is also hard. It's very different than a therapist. A therapist is like, I'm going to see you at 2:00 on Saturday and for an hour, maybe 45 minutes. And so it's just a very different thing. You can schedule some things for sure, our prenatals and things like that, but you cannot schedule births,
right? Even
if you have inductions or anything like that. It's just anybody who's had an induction knows that that's not how it works. You don't just go in and have a baby. So that being said, building up sustainability, both with having good backup support, partnerships with other doulas and other birth workers is super important. Mm-hmm. So that in Spring GR, I don't know if you know, that's a local business class. I'm not sure if everyone knows who they are, but they talk a lot about relational capital. And that is extremely important, which is why some of our doulas who have come to the doula world later in life are actually doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Because they know a lot, and they know a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And I can't overstate how important that is in this profession especially. I feel like that's important in every profession, but this profession especially, having a diverse skill set and a diverse group of people that you know is so important. So I would say to the younger doulas, be patient and also just get to know everybody.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. Put yourself out there. Network. Yes, yeah. It sounds like it's the most important thing.
Unfortunately, some doulas will tell you that, and I've seen this in national doula pages as well, but around here there has been some sense of competition or not like gatekeeping, that kind of thing. So where if a newer doula, I literally just saw this happen yesterday. She just got trained, and she wants to connect with doulas. And she posted on the doula Grand Rapids doula page looking for connections. And she had already reached out to me, so we are going to meet actually tomorrow. But she stated that she had reached out to a lot of people and had not really had a lot of people wanting to just give up their time and meet with her and stuff like that. Which makes sense on the one hand because we don't have unlimited time, and even I created the mentorship program that I have because I don't have time to meet with every single doula that just got trained. But that being said, me and the doulas that I work with closely are very much of the collaborative mindset, and so we're hoping that will help change the culture a little bit more to not. I think it was even you. That said that scarcity mentality of, because before it really was a very limited group of people who knew about a doula and could afford one. Mm-hmm. And so in a way, I understand where that competitive mindset came from, but that's not helpful for us as a birth worker community, and it's for sure not helpful for the clients. Right. So, hoping that will, but that is a potential pitfall, I will say, for newer doulas is if they don't already have community, which I love that you've already trained a group of them that are local, and that hopefully will support each other. Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of doulas would train over here and then just come back and expect just the community to happen. So that's really good. And that is something that we do with Radiant Roots too, is where we host different social things, different trainings, really encourage people to talk to each other a lot.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much for stopping by and
Yeah, of
chatting with us.
course.
I'll give you the opportunity to go ahead and plug your socials or about Radiant Roots or yourself if you want.
All right. Yeah, so Radiant Roots doulanetwork.com. We have a website and we have Facebook, but also if anyone is looking for a doula and either has Medicaid or the traditional doula prices are too high for you, feel free to hit us up. So our phone number and our Facebook page and our website all have the inquiry form that you can find out what options you have for doulas in your area.
Great. Thank you so much, Allison. We appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks so much.